we know what we're talking about?
Season 3.
Hi, I'm John Stevens.
This is Matt Russell.
And this
is Pod Have Mercy.
Do you know that a couple came up to me and said they ran into somebody in Cabo who listens to Pod Have Mercy, and they said, "Are you from Houston?" They said, "No, I'm from upstate New York." So,
Awesome.
Take that.
That's right. We're crushing it in upstate New York.
Other podcasts.
We've got a listener in upstate New York.
People actually listen to this podcast.
Who's not a relative.
Entering season 3, so we're gonna have we'll have some of our guests back from the past, like Dr. Cleve Tinsley, his wife Lanicia, who in her own right is an amazing artist and brilliant mind. Jennifer Bailey.
Yeah, Jennifer's a United Methodist pastor at Tennessee and is doing a lot of work on the edges with millennials and folks that are coming back to church.
Looking forward to having Bishop Janice Huey, who's leading some stuff now with the Texas Methodist Foundation around just sort of recapturing kind of where we are in time and space and renewal and leadership, a lot of good stuff that she's done. Matt Miofsky is a friend of mine from St. Louis who pastors a really interesting church called The Gathering that's highly evangelical and highly inclusive, which some people think you can't have that kind of a church together, but
Matt's
he has
doing it.
proven it
He's
wrong
doing it.
with one of the fastest growing Methodist churches in the U.S. Rudy Rasmus.
Yeah. Well,
Just we gotta go have coffee.
I can't believe we have not had Rudy on the podcast before. I mean, he's at St. John's United Methodist Church. He's been a United Methodist pastor.
And we have to go to Galveston with Michael Ganger.
Oh, yeah.
We are in the great city of Waco,
Texas. Sorry.
Waco, Texas, the home of the Baylor Bears national championship men's basketball.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah.
That happened recently?
I had to go to the bookstore this morning to get Bob Lindsay some swag.
Yeah, Bob's pretty stoked probably that we're here.
He calls it the Promised Land.
Promised Land. Yeah.
So Matt and I are joined today by Joseph Patty.
That's me.
Joseph Patty is the newest member of Chapelwood staff, and he is the director of student ministries now. And so we're up at Summit, which is a great mission outreach that the youth and adults, we have about 250, I think. I don't remember the exact count, but I repeat what they say to me, of middle schoolers and high schoolers and adult chaperones that are out working all in the community, helping to rebuild homes, helping to improve homes. Like today we were at a site where they're helping give a paint job, but also reinforcing a back deck that's basically deteriorating on a house. And interesting story. Why don't you tell the next door? It was Michelle.
Oh yeah.
And next door is her mom, Miss Betty.
That's right. We're working on her mom's house with a crew of students. And next door is where Michelle lives. And so 4 years ago, Summit came to Waco and they worked on Michelle's house. And so her mom, the house that we're working on, her mom has Alzheimer's and is unable to come out and interact with us. And so Michelle has been the contact person. And the first day we were there, Michelle came over and we all just greeted her and were talking with her. And she had this blue card in her hand. And she said 4 years ago, there was a crew here that redid my house. And she talked about how much of an impact it had on her. And the blue card that she had in her hand was a thank you note that the Summit students had written to her, thanking her for the opportunity to work on her house. And she talked about the folks that were there. And she said, hey, there's a real tall guy that was there. And she started describing this person. I said, oh, I think you're talking about Mark Hauser. And she said, yes, Mark. And so she talked about Mark for a while and the other students that were there. And it was just this legacy of love and connection. It was just great. It was just, and all the kids that were surrounding her were like kind of blown away that that's the kind of impact that they're going to be having. And
this is the first, so it's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
If you think about Summit in Houston in 2017, we had Harvey. We did a lot of local work, really 2 years in a row. Local work. They stayed at the church. We didn't travel outside of the city because there was a lot of work that needed to be done
In the city.
in Houston,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, why do you go to Waco or Bulverde or wherever it is that you go when you've got all this need that you could be doing right there in Houston? So for 2 years we did it in Houston, and then we had this little thing called the global pandemic, and kids were not allowed to go and do anything. And so last night in worship, in these evenings, to see these kids run up to the front and put their arms around each other
And just worship.
sing and worship, and it's just, I don't know about y'all, but I mean, I've seen videos of you doing youth ministry in masks and socially distanced, and I mean, it's just crazy. So
crazy
there's something about being all together in that room that's kind of special, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that we're worshiping, and I haven't been around this many people in a year and a half, and collectively, like there's like 200 or so folks in the worship service, and it's just like, and everybody's like connected and just singing together. And I feel like it's this like amazing way to come out of the pandemic in some ways through like worship and service. It's been extraordinary.
So Joseph Patty,
Yeah, man.
who's the most famous Joseph that you know?
That you know.
Well, not or you know of.
That's
Joe Rogan.
Joseph.
See, that's what the podcast dude would say.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of negative Josephs, but they all spell their name with an F.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah,
The mass murderers like Joseph Stalin.
Yeah. Yeah, those. So,
Most famous Joseph that you know of. Bible Joseph?
I mean, besides, the Bible Josephs are the main ones. So the rest of them live
Joseph
in Russia.
Biden?
Joseph Clam.
Yeah, but he spells it the wrong way.
He
Oh,
does.
the mass murderer way.
The most famous. All right, so
He does. Actually,
the
Dear Lord.
famous Patty,
Ooh, peppermint patty.
peppermint Patty, of
Come
course.
on.
Yeah.
It's got. I mean, there's.
I was thinking Patty LaBelle.
Oh,
Patty name's pretty fun for me. It's if you go up into the Northwest, it's actually pretty popular.
it's like Irish or what is it?
It's technically from
Joseph
the Isle
Patty?
of Man.
Hello, Patty.
Oh,
Patty.
Patty.
Laddiebuck, how you doing?
Oh,
Yeah.
Patty.
Technically from
Patty.
the Isle of
Another
Man,
Guinness
which is
for
that
you, eh?
little island right between England and Ireland. So there's a little of both
Okay.
there.
That's where all the patties are from.
Oh, there you go.
All the
There you
patties
go.
are from the little Isle of Man there.
Yeah, a little Isle of Man. What another Guinness for you there, laddie.
Slip some Jamaican in there at the end of your Irish.
My accent's all over the place, man. I never know what's going to come out. It's an island, and that work that's the same.
Yeah. No, but
And and here's the kicker. So your Joseph Patty, Joe Patty, in Pensacola is the greatest seafood market of all.
Joe Patty's,
Joe Patty's Seafood.
but they spell it wrong too.
Yeah, they spell it with an I instead of a Y. They're not from the Isle of Man. They're from the Isle of Gulf Breeze, Florida. So they spell it a little bit different. Well, Joseph, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, man. I grew up West Texas. Kind of that rural setting. Went to A&M, then went up to seminary.
Whoop.
And whoop.
I learned how to do that.
And went up to seminary in Kentucky at Asbury. And man, I swore I would never move to Houston, and God said check. So been here about 7 years, and working over at St. Luke's, doing youth ministry over there. Been loving it. Moved here when my daughter, been married about 12 years, and my daughter was about 6 months old when we moved here, and so now she is 7, and I've got a 5-year-old son, and they are like 100%. She is all girl, princess, dancing, storytelling, and he is destruction and potty jokes.
Wreck-It Ralph.
And but man, they both have just like the biggest hearts, and it's cool.
Great.
So having fun with that, and got ourselves a quarantine dog, and
What kind of dog?
it is a mutt of mutts. It has got, oh gosh, what all? Like the two that she resembles the most are Doberman and Lab. So a Dobrador, and then, but she's also got Rottweiler. She's got what were the other ones?
Would you have a genetic test done?
So actually, we didn't. But one of the other
Ancestry.
I mean, he's going down the list like part Rottweiler. It's like, what did it, 23andMe? And you like sent the nasal swab in, and the dog came back. And
one of the other families,
mostly from the continent of Southeast Asia.
there's 30% unknown, and there's probably
30%. We just call that mutt. That's the breed.
Yeah, man, she's a great dog. She's finally stopped wetting the floor when I opened the front door, which we're excited about. Right. But
you either scared the crap out of her, or she was just so glad to see you she couldn't contain it.
Oh man, she's the most affectionate. She's aggressively affectionate. So I just tell people when they come over, just go ahead, let her kiss you in the mouth, and just get it over with. And so.
I will not be coming over to visit you.
I'll let you know when that phase is done.
Yeah.
All right. So
well, so youth ministry.
Yeah, man.
And you've been doing this now for a number of years, and now you're coming over here to Chapelwood to work with us and doing that. I mean, talk about just youth ministry in 2021. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic, so that's a whole nother level of thing, but.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm excited to kind of creatively approach it. Right, there's the basics of it, which is just basically building relationships, getting to know people until they get to know Jesus, and creating this environment where people can learn to not just like be a Christian. Like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I want people who are following Jesus. I want to disciple people so that when they go off to college, like, they're dangerous. You know what I mean? I don't want just the people who are going to survive and maybe come back to church one day. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but just the drop-off rate of students leaving college. I mean, we've all read the statistics that it's, depending on the year, 50% and up of people who grew up in church, were highly involved in church, and then come back and never think about church again. Well, maybe they don't think about it, but they never enter a church again. And I think there's a way that we can approach youth ministry that isn't just let us entertain you, but I believe that they have a high and deep capacity to understand difficult things, to delve deeply into faith, but also to lead the church. And so that's really kind of been my mantra even the last 7 years. I came in and wanted to build this student leadership process and let them basically just take over and run it. Right. So most of our middle school retreats were run by high school students, and to watch them catch that bug for being able to pour into others, and for an other-centered lifestyle, a missional lifestyle, that it's not. They're not at the end goal yet. They're still students. If they were at the end goal, that'd be pretty cool. But but there's these seeds planted of recognizing, like, like a life with God is not just being a good person, but it is a life that is in love with Him and lived for others. And so planting those seeds and really not being satisfied with just, hey, our church attendance is good. So yeah, that's kind of a roundabout way of saying my view of ministry.
There was an article I was reading, and there's this adolescent psychiatry. She studies religion and faith in teenagers, and she talks about that the teenager's brain grows really rapidly, and they can begin to think more abstractly and critically, and they begin to get their own ideals. They also are really keen at recognizing sincerity and hypocrisy and authenticity. Yeah. So, like, if you're like putting on a show or not, it's like I always tell parents whenever they're talking about, well, how do I deal with these difficult situations with my children? I'm like, you just need to be honest for the most part, because
Yeah.
they have some kind of
Yeah.
telekinetic, telepathic power to kind of read when stuff's
BS
going
meter.
on.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they know,
Yeah.
like, well, our marriage is falling apart, but we haven't told our kids yet. I'm like, your
Yeah.
kids know.
They know. They've known for a long time.
I knew like 2 or 3 years before my parents finally got divorced that things were not good, and they just thought they were, But it was fascinating to me, because one of the things I liked of what she wrote, it was a long article. They deal with a lot of heartbreak, social cliques. They see the suffering of the world. They wonder about God, how God's involved in those things, and they're not really interested. Although sometimes we think in terms of synthesizing stuff down in very simple ways, right? I got to talk to this. I got to talk about this in a way that a teenager will understand, and yet that puts them in a place of like, you're not capable of understanding real thoughts and real ideas. A mature conversation, but says that. Right when kids are beginning to struggle and have more doubts is when we ask them to affirm their faith at confirmation. And what do you think about the whole article is really interesting, because it tells a story about one particular teenager. We can talk about him later, Thomas Ramey from Decatur, Alabama, who kind of grew up actively involved in the church, going to everything 3-4 days a week, blah, blah, blah. And now he's kind of like almost agnostically connected spiritually in his life, because he saw such a disconnect. He was sort of in a social outcast, a clique in his church. So it was bullying, and there was this, and he saw how his church and other teenagers dealt with some of his friends that were gay or whatever else. And so it was just all this stuff that he grew up with. Here he's in the church, and he sees how they're talking and interacting and dealing, and it kind of, I won't say it pushes him away, but it really causes him to say, what is this? It talks a story about how his mother was friends with a family, and the guy was dying of dementia, and he watched him, and he prayed for him and prayed for him, and the guy died. And he's like, I don't really pray for things anymore. He says, because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I'm thinking, man, don't want to put it all at the feet of that guy's church, but it's like, we need to do a better job of giving space, like you said, for doubt, for fear, for beholding where kids are.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a fascinating article I was reading, this morning, and it speaks a lot to where the kids now, we assume, I did youth ministry 30 years ago. I don't know that it's in the same place that it was.
Probably not.
But they didn't have cell phones.
I was like,
That was back in the day
technology.
when the parent didn't pick up the kid. You go, come on back in my office. Let's call your mom from my landline.
From my rotary phone.
She's not answering, so she must be on her way. Anyway, thoughts about kids? You got teenage kids.
Dear Lord, I got 3 teenage kids. Yeah. I think in some ways, like we set our kids up to leave the church because we create such an in and out way of believing. So belief is all in our heads, right? And we don't incorporate the sense of doubt as an absolute, common, and necessary way to integrate faith. And so that I believe and I don't believe are really a part of what it means to be faithful, right? Folks that don't doubt don't really believe. They parrot. They're holding on to something that they want to make them secure. And it's really about assurances and security that people invest in. I think a lot of ways our faith has been kind of at least perpetuated is that we make it into these belief systems, right? And so you're in and out based on those beliefs. But if you don't believe, if God doesn't heal your mother or can't do this or doesn't do that, but the God you've been given, when we start out with omnipotent, omniscient, all these omnis, we start in an abstract place, right? Yeah. And we think all power means that God can do anything because we know what power is. I've seen Superman, and God's got to be stronger than Superman, right? But then you were in the New Testament, in the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he can't walk. He can walk on water, but at the end, he can't carry his own cross. And we say at the end is where he's the most powerful, right? And so we don't teach our kids a way of holding these truths, I think. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. Like specifically the teenage brain with its newfound ability to process doubt. We kind of, like you were saying, we almost make this idol out of certainty.
Yeah.
And if we can teach students how to journey through doubt, those can actually be avenues for really deepening your faith. Right. Instead of just being so afraid of it. Oh, if I don't say the right thing, if I don't it's okay that your theology is a little bit of a mess. Let me shepherd you through that. Let's walk through that together and we'll figure it out. I'm not worried about people having the right answers as much as I want them to, kind of like you were saying, authentically pursue. And if authentic pursuit means being honest about where you're at to start, and maybe not ready whenever it's time for confirmation to be forced into saying, I believe X, Y, and Z when I'm in 6th grade. That's a lot to ask of anybody, right? I myself came to a solid, deep faith after my 6th grade year. I had an encounter with the Lord that was very real, and shifted the trajectory of my life, right? But I was also the first of most of my friends.
Yeah, I think if you take, I don't know how many kids are down there, worshiping last night, at the church where we're gathering, but I'm looking at all of them in there and I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a lot of kids here who, don't even know what to make how to make sense of God at this point.
That's right.
And so there's social activities, they're worshiping, they get together, they put the arms around each other. And it's a social cohesion, there's something happening going on that they've missed, and that it really is neat to see. Just these kids haven't been together in 14 months or a year and a half. And so they just can't wait to hop pews and get down on the front in front of the music and just put the arms around each other. It's like, I haven't been this close to another teenager in a year and a half.
I haven't been able to breathe in the same space as you, much less put my arms around you, right?
And so that's a powerful thing, but you can't tell me that there's not a lot of kids down there that are struggling. I was texting a lot of parents some pictures and videos. There's a lot of them that I'm friends with, and one dad texted me a note from his daughter, and it was just basically simply like, this is so awesome. I'm almost to tears, and people were looking at me and I didn't care. She goes, and I just feel like God's presence, and I know that he's real in this moment tonight, where we're all together. And I'm thinking, that's not coming in isolation in a pandemic. That's coming corporately together, where there's worship together, there's kids together.
We're serving together.
We're serving together. It's like you go out and you watch. It's like putting hands and feet. That's why I think that the summit is so interesting, because it really does. It's sort of the head, the heart, the hands, everything together. So you have the passion of the worship, right? You have the head where you have the learning or the lessons and the devos that they're doing in the morning, at night. And then they go out and they get their hands, they get paint on their hands, or Levi climbing under the house this morning. He says, Tim Howard's like, who wants to climb under the house? And everybody's looking and going,
not me.
And then finally somebody goes, I'll do it. He goes, no. He goes, Levi, I need somebody strong. And Levi goes, I don't know if I want to do that. It's like, what's under there? He goes, well, there's no rats because there's 100 feral cats all around us. So there's no rats, but there might be cats. And sure enough, he goes in there. There's some great video.
There's some great video.
Jeff and Zach got some great video, because there was a hole on the side of the bottom of the house.
And Zach was able
to shoot and shine the light in so you can see Tim and Levi up under the house. And then when he came back around the house, they're like, you're going to have company. The cat just went through the hole.
And Levi's like, no.
But they're bracing up this back porch that's caving
Yeah.
in for this elderly
Yeah.
lady there at her house. But I go back to just that's the hand. So it's like I'm actually doing something for someone.
Absolutely.
And when you were interviewing these kids, I didn't get to hear all that they were saying, but there's some connection for them of faith and passion and head and doing.
Right.
I think that's very healthy.
Well, the way we learn to, I was thinking even the way we learn to walk is not by watching a video or taking a course on walking. The way we learn to walk is by like stumbling and coordinating our bodies and having people say, you can do it, kind of come this way, holding us away. And I think our faith, we've stuck it so much in our head and it's about right beliefs. So you say these right things and that makes you a Christian, which is absolutely nutty. When we think about the way of walking with Jesus, right? That's a portion of it. It's not even the biggest portion. But the way of becoming a Christian is through what John's saying, through the coordination of things with our hands and our heart, right? I was thinking about what Michael Polanyi says, that our believing at its source is conditioned by our belonging. And so we first belong before we believe, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, like this, even, for this girl that you were talking about, she has this place to belong. Like she has this community, the sense of community that she hasn't felt, which honestly just kind of opens the door, right, for her to actually sense God in some way. And you even think about the way that Jesus called his disciples. It was, come be a part of this little tight,
come and see,
tight gang, and let's do stuff. And then it's not till, like, if you're following Matthew, it's not till chapter 16, halfway through the book, that we even get to, like, I have some sense of the right belief. And even the next sentence is, get behind me, Satan. Right? Like, it's still pretty messed up theology, but we're getting there. So yeah, it is this, let's together go and do what Jesus does, and you'll meet him along the way.
One of the things that we really resonated with us when we were talking to you about this position, this job, was how important it is for you to have relationships with the kids.
Oh, 100%.
Not just to be like the director of programming,
right.
Gopher on the Love Boat, right? Remember Gopher from the Love Boat?
Shuffleboard,
the cruise director. That's old school. You got to be really good. Jeff's like, wait a minute, Love Boat? There was a Gopher. Is there a Gopher on Love Boat? Yeah, Julian Gopher.
It was before 1988, or whenever you were born.
yeah. But I mean, talk about how important relationships are. Having mentors in your life. How we talked with Tim Howard about that. He was on the video talking about he didn't have those kind of mentors and relationships in his life, and he feels like it's so important for him to pour into these kids in this way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There are a handful of people that I know that follow Jesus because Jesus showed up in a dream, or they happened to, open a Bible and like this really stood out to them. Pretty much every Christian that I know has been led to Jesus by someone else, by youth pastors, by parents, by friends, by some adult who is willing to come alongside and pay attention to some ignorant kid. It's like you were saying, it's not just something that's cognitive, which is the trap that particularly the American church has fallen into over the last 100 years. It's if you're learning to walk with Jesus, you need somebody to introduce you to this person. And you're not going to do that unless you're walking with someone else relationship. So like discipleship is not just curriculum. It is life on life. It's let me get to know you and get to know your mess. And when I see that my mess is actually completely welcome to the table, and that not only do you welcome it, but then, tangentially, like, oh, Jesus welcomes my mess. And, oh, by the way, Jesus is the only one who can heal my mess. like that's where transformation happens. You know, I love, so I'm harping on the cognitive side of it. Like I love to teach. Like I love digging into the Bible study. I love all of that. But I've learned that it is very, very rare, no matter how gifted of a speaker you are, for anybody to remember what you said a week later or even after lunch. Like it's rare. But through relationship and through staying in relationship, I've noticed that slowly people's worldview and students' worldview just changes. And they start to talk like you, and they start to think like you, and they start to, and not that I'm trying to make mini-me's, but kind of the same way that Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. That's the direction, right? So I don't know if that actually answers your question.
You give room and space for kids to be uniquely themselves. I mean, in all the different ways, and even coming to faith. I mean, you look at whether it was the disciples or anyone that came after Jesus. I mean, some people came, it was a very mystical way. You think about through history, and some people came in a very intellectual way, and some people came in a very, in a way that it embraced like poverty. Yeah. They felt like that was the basic way, or through work, tilling the soil and growing and building. And so it's like, there's so many different expressions the way you live your faith. And I do think that one of the reasons we talk a lot about on this podcast is, the reason that when you say a lot of people in the world don't connect to institutional religion and they don't connect to church anymore, and there's growing secularism, is that people are spiritual. I mean, if I had a dollar for every time somebody said I'm spiritual but not religious, I mean, that'd be really wealthy. Never surprised, but I'd be wealthy when I hear it. And I think though that they're looking at a church that's institutionally laden about the hypocrisy, just the way we treat people, and become so dogmatic and so much about drawing circles and who's in and who's out and who's right and who's wrong. And it's like, it's not relational. It's like, it's anti-relational. And so when you think about whether it's United Methodist Church or any other church going through all the stuff that they're going through, it's kind of like, man, we've kind of really lost the fundamentals of what it means to be a community of faith. Yeah. We're supposed to be about bringing in people that we don't see eye to eye with. That's right. And wrestling through that together. A bigger tent, not a
we don't
small
always
one. End up in the same space. Yeah. We haven't done that for 2,000 years. But you don't keep dividing and dividing and dividing. That seems to me to be sort of antithetical to what the body of Christ is about. And to me, Corinthians is the best of reading Paul really wrestling with a divided community that really can't stand each other. It really feels like that group is really bad, or no, you're really bad. No, they're doing wrong. No, they're doing wrong. And he's trying to keep them together. And it's just messy. Yeah. 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 But they come together around what? The faith, table. Hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I mean, everybody thinks that's the wedding passage. It's really a passage where Paul's talking about what it means to be in community. You can have you can have all the words in the world, but if you don't have love, you have nothing. Right. You're just a clanging cymbal, a gong. That's all you are, because you don't have love. So I just love nowadays. Everybody's got words. Everybody's got teachings. Everybody's got the legalism. I always wonder too. This is something I've been thinking about. I need to journal more because I can't remember anything. It's like, okay, let's say I stayed in the church, and I stayed in the church with other people that I disagree with. Would I no longer be able to make disciples? Would I no longer be able to faithfully follow Jesus? Would I no longer be able to be a Christian? Would I no longer be able? And I'm like, no, none of that stuff would end. No. So I'm like, so what is it about that we have to walk away?
Because I wonder if we
rooted in.
Well, and if our ideas become
purity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know. I'm trying to scratch my head and figure that out.
Well, I think our, like you were saying, our ideas then become the idol, because we know. And we know what will offend God. It's those people that are not doing what I'm doing, or don't have the same issues that I have, or whatever those things are. And so then we say we can't, if we don't agree with them, we can't have fellowship with them, which is absolutely nuts. And I think if we're family, if Christ came to make a new family where we are border crossing in our relationships, we are reaching across divides, then there are going to be people that don't agree with us and we don't agree with. That doesn't mean that God's not trying to create a new family out of those people, and that's where we have to hang in.
Being an empty vessel, we have so many predetermined ideas about so many things. A lot of it, we have to ask ourselves, how much of it is rooted in cultural ways of understanding?
Yeah.
Because when I think about, take homosexuality for an example, right? Culturally, there's been a long sort of understanding, just, that's not acceptable, or that's not allowed, or that's not given space. When I think about, in 200 years ago, divorce was not given that space. And now we don't look at a divorced and remarried person with you're anathema. Maybe some churches do, but not too many do. But it's there's a movement that goes, and it's why does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen because the Bible changes what it says about anything. It changes because you're either going to come at a relationship with someone who's been divorced and remarried from the perspective of, well, Jesus said that you don't qualify, so you're committing adultery, so you should never be married. Or do we recognize that we live in a world that's fallen and broken, and there's nobody that's getting it right? And is there still capability for redemption in the life of this person whose marriage fell apart? And can part of that redemption be in being remarried to someone? Can there be grace in that moment? And so, I get that people have different views on things, and they're really strong-held views on things. But I look and see how different we look at divorce and remarriage now versus in 1875, right? Because United Methodists used to be not allowed legally to remarry divorced people.
I also wonder, theologically, if part of that is I need to take a step further and say, when Peter was told to rise up and eat, this food that he wasn't
supposed to eat, which was against the law.
It was absolutely against the law. And the Spirit said, now what I have said, what was formerly unclean is now clean. And so the question I have, how do we remain open and curious and ask, is the Spirit doing something that I need to pay attention to? Is what the Spirit doing in this moment is asking us to open ourselves up to something? And if I have already the pre-answered yes or no, I can't move into the space where the Spirit is saying, I'm asking you to be open. I'm asking you to be curious about what is happening in this moment in time. And I'm wondering, is God asking us to begin to open ourselves up to say, follow me in this, be curious about this, wonder what the Spirit's up to.
And I think that's the thing where the world intersects with organized religion in the church, is they see organized religion, institutional church, is your cup's already full.
Yeah.
Your cup's already, you've got your mind made up on so many things. And what they want to see is a church that says, we don't know everything about everything. Yeah. We know a couple of things that we're pretty confident in and we're pretty sure in. Yeah. But when it comes to people and interactions and relationships, we're struggling with that too. We're still not getting it all right all the time. And so are you willing to have a little humility? And again, it goes back to, there's a law of legalism and there's a law of love. And if you read the scripture from beginning to end, what you find is Jesus brings this law of love, which fulfills that law of legalism. Yes. It's what perfects the law, and it's rooted in love. And I'm thinking, no matter who I disagree with, or no matter whose lifestyle I say, I'm not sure that that's right or wrong or whatever, but I have not love, I'm nothing.
I think at the end of the day, for me, it's difficult to make these dogmatic statements. That's above my pay grade. But to me, at the end of the day, it is in this spirit of humility, am I following Jesus in in true submission, right? So, maybe for my first podcast, I shouldn't make any
No, it's
super intense remarks, but
no, but this is what we do in this podcast.
so, but I don't know. To me, when you even think about going back to Acts, like there was this for Peter, it was this undeniable move of the Spirit.
But
And
he was resistant all the way.
Yeah, he was resistant every step of the way with Jesus, like we said a minute ago, like the "get behind me" Satan statement. And then all of a sudden, in this moment, it's this very clear, and he has this weird dream that he doesn't like. And the very next scene is him showing up, and he sees the Spirit fall out on Gentiles. And it's this recognition of, oh, the Spirit is for them too. And then a couple chapters later, it is this... okay, like, well, now the Gentiles are in, like, what does church look like anymore? I don't know. But you see them wrestling with Scripture and wrestling with, well, it seems good to the Spirit and to us. And it's this humility and this, I just want to submit to what Jesus is doing, right?
But I love how he's not even perfect in the process. I mean, he gets to the point where he like backs off, and then he goes to meet Paul, and he's like, he won't eat with the Gentiles.
And
Paul's like, and it basically, I think the way Paul words is the nicest way the Bible can say, I basically gave him the what for.
Yeah.
I had no small dissension. I think it's the way he said it. I had no small dissension with Peter. It was like, that's about as harsh as you can say in Bible terms.
Yeah.
Because I mean, so Peter was there, but he's so inculcated in kind of his faith as a Jew and the church and with Jesus, and so he sees it. And he knows it because he was the first one to do it, right? He got the vision. He went to Cornelius, and then he's like put in the place, and then he's like culturally he's pressured too, and so he's back and forth. And I think that's the great analogy of us struggling when things change for us so drastically, so radically, especially culturally for us,
right.
Whether it's divorce and remarriage or whether it's, women in ministry back years ago. I mean, it used to be a big thing, or whether it's
thing.
now with marriage, same-sex marriage and all these things, we struggle with these things. And I say it's okay to struggle with these things because we're frail human creatures, but we cannot stop loving. And the minute that we say, I'm not going to sit at the table with that person, then I think we diverge from the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament.
That's right.
He said, I didn't come, I didn't come for those who are well or those who have it all together, and I came for those who need someone. The well don't need a doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's what the church is called to be. We're called to go and be with the folks that are broken and confused, that the world is pushing to the margins. I wonder, it's like if we were here, if Jesus were here today, where would Jesus be? I doubt very seriously he'd be in any of the church buildings. I don't think.
Especially if his name is Jesus. Just saying.
His name is Jesus.
I know, I'm just saying.
Jesucristo. Jesucristo.
Yeah, because then change often then comes as like Thomas Kuhn says, change always comes on the margins, on the edges. It never comes at the center. Change never is evoked from the center. But still, we as a church are still trying to control everything from the center. And change always comes from the margins, from the outside in, not from the inside out. And I think that we have to be in relationship with the things on the margins to continue to be able to ask those questions. What is God doing, and are we being faithful to what we don't know? Because if the church says we already know and all we're doing is dispensing truth because we have the truth, and the truth is printed in these words in the Bible, we don't really need Jesus anymore. We just need the words on the Bible, right? If the Spirit's alive, then the Spirit moves in ways that where, like you were saying, where once, women in ministry was anathema. Then it was divorced people. Then it was, before that it was, anything, whatever
just
criteria
think about
we
how
had.
the Bible has been used, for racial
Dear Lord.
issues of lack of equality. I mean, to justify slavery or whatever else. I mean, thank God we've moved past those things culturally, but there's a lot of things we haven't moved past that we still. I think for me, the humility is just recognizing there are things culturally that we're limited. Our sight is limited, and so what is it that surpasses all of that? That's the discipleship stuff to me. That's where you grow in the image and the likeness of Christ. Is there, not in the litmus test of who's right, who's wrong. Because I can guarantee you right now, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that people are dealing with, and when it comes to identity things and all this kind of stuff, I don't understand it. I mean, I'll be the first to say I don't understand it. Yeah. But I'm also not gonna like relegate or cut someone off or say that you're not welcome here. But I am gonna say I don't really get this, because there's new stuff coming out every day when it comes to like sexuality and all this kind of stuff. I don't understand it. I'm willing to say that, but I'm also willing to say I love, and I'm going to continue to be willing to love, and I want to continue to have God challenge my way of seeing the world, because I come out of a specific way, a specific experience that's different than other people's. So, well, we got to stop. Go back to work at Summit. Go back under the house.
Under the house, Levi.
Yeah. He didn't want to go, and we said, get under the house.
He ate his lunch under there. Could I have my sandwich, sir?
Not till you finish nailing that board under that. Thank you, Joseph Patty.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, I'm John Stevens.
And I'm Matt Russell.
Joseph Patty.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.